Well, number one, Bruce was a fanatic, which you don't get to be a Val or a Shondo or anybody great, a Chuck Norris, a Bruce Lee. You've got to train hard and constantly and consistently with people who know more than you do, if you want to be great. And so with Bruce, he ran. He realized that he started lifting weights. I started getting him protein because that's how I had gone from 130 pounds up to my current 190. And by lifting weights and by eating protein. And so he realized that that's the only way I'm really going to build muscle and get bigger and stronger. And so Bruce was a fanatic about it. So in his house in Bel Air, everywhere you went, there was equipment. I ultimately made him a 300-pound bag, which he hung outside, but that's a whole nother story. But the bottom line is, in all of his houses that I was ever in, including Hong Kong, he had a universal gym in his kitchen. He had weights by every chair. He had a bike. He'd ride his bike like crazy and just really, and when you'd watch TV. Everywhere, he was stretching. He constantly put his foot up on a ladder. He was stretching, running, aerobics. He realized from the fight with Wong Man Jack, but he also realized that it was a closer event than he wanted it to be. And he got the best of it, but he was exhausted. So he realized then you need aerobic conditioning. So he skipped rope, and he just did it all. So then I had a great collection of boxing films. I have a huge collection from Jack Johnson, 1908 forward. So I started sharing them with him because we both admired boxers, and we felt that while martial artists are superior to boxers in a full contact situation, or a street fight for that matter, we needed their knowledge because we didn't know how to sit down on punches. We didn't know how to keep our chin down. I mean, a lot of traditional karate, your chin up here so you can get yourself knocked out. And so we wanted to steal. That's called research. So I started showing them Jack Johnson, Jack Dempsey, all the old great fighters leading up to the great Muhammad Ali, you know, in my opinion, the greatest heavyweight who ever lived. So we studied them all. And after a while, I turned them on to where I was starting to buy the film from, which is a guy who was a world handball champion who later created Mike Tyson. Amazing guy. Unfortunately, we lost him young, but he was a world handball champion. And so anyway, Bruce constantly challenged himself. He ran. I showed him how Muhammad Ali had shared with me how he ran backwards a lot. And bang, 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 and footwork, and so on and so forth. So we studied footwork. We stole from the boxers. We stole from other martial artists. So he was constantly researching. So the fact that we were constantly challenging each other and I'm bringing him a gift of boxing. He's bringing me a gift of Qigong. He's giving me a gift of sticky hands, and so on and so forth. We're constantly, it's a mutual benefit society. So then I perfected, in my opinion, how to take punches and kicks. Nobody ever taught me, but I observed it. And it's simple, I figured it out. If you got a brown paper bag, fill it full of air. Any 7-year-old girl or boy can pop that bag. Pop, right? Fresh bag. George Foreman can't break that bag if you do one thing. Bruce Lee can't break that bag if you do one thing. Chuck Norris can't break that bag. The hardest hitters in the world can't break that bag if you do one thing. When you go to hit the bag, let go of it. It's the air being trapped. So it's, you're, okay, I'm ready. That's how you get ruptured. So you got to be relaxed. You got to let it go. You got to get into your chi and just chill. Then you need to build your confidence that you can take it. So the way I used to teach my students was lay them on the ground like sardines and make them close their eyes, and I just walk on them, soft, gently, for 2 weeks before the class. And then we'd get into the class. And then the next week, I would step on them a little harder and do that for 2 weeks. Then the next, I would jump on them softly, flat-footed. And ultimately, it would lead up to where I was jumping on them hard. Make it all their eyes closed so they're not anticipating. Letting the air go. So because I could take great punches and because I never got upset, Chuck Norris, you don't want to hit him in the face. You're going to die. Hit him in the body, he's okay. But I never cared. Somebody hits me, harder, the better. That was a lesson. You're not going to do it twice. I'm going to figure out how to avoid it next time. All right? So I always like to get hit because that was research. So fighting, it's not my first rodeo. I wanted full contact. That's why we created it, Joe Louis and I. So anyway, after a while with the training, because Bruce and I did a lot of training, we also added Chuck Norris into the mix. And we added Pat Burleson into the mix. We added Jim Harris into the mix, and so on and so forth. But after a while, he realized that I don't run from pain. I've never even taken an aspirin. I've never smoked. My wife thinks I'm a joke. But I said, look, I'm a friend to pain. I give it, I receive it. You have to learn how to deal with pain or you're never getting anywhere in life. So for those who fail in life, it's because they mask their pain. They drink too much. They do drugs, which is a dead-end street. They call it dope because it's only for dopes. No intelligent person with a brain would ever start down the path of dope. And I've never had one person say, oh, I loved it. But anyway, back to Bruce, so he started seeing that I could take the punches and the kicks. So that's why we started doing film. He could unload on me. And so Into the Dragon was a perfect example of the evolution. Before every scene, because we were very close brothers, I loved Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee was a brilliant talent. Bruce Lee was a brilliant martial artist. He was also a darn good man. He was a magician, loved to take quarters out of kids' ears. He was kind, tough as nails, but kind, a good man. So before every scene, he would say, Wall, I'm going to break something. Hey, you little Chinaman, you can't break anything. That's why I show you my favorite picture of him after I'm dead, after 3 months and Into the Dragon, he's hugging me. And you can see the love. That's why it's so important to me, because we lost the great Bruce Lee at 32 years old. But that's how I wound up doing all the films. I did Way of the Dragon, and we shot some of the scenes for Game of Death when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had come into town, and he had a whole image of what was going to be Hercules Revisited, a 7-story building. Well, later, in 77, when we redid it, and Bruce had been dead for 4 years, they had to steal scenes, but put it into a whole new script because he never completed. The idea was a monster on the first level, but the ultimate monster, Kareem Abdul, is on the 7th level. And that would be the ultimate Hercules Revisited. And so that was kind of how we learned, how we started doing the films together, a short version. I lived with Bruce and his career for a long time. He was treated from Ed Parker, put him in the Internationals to do a phenomenal demonstration. He was discovered by Hollywood, winds up getting the part in Kato. It runs a couple years, then he's out of business, and now he's out of money. And so he was treated like a coolie. Basically, in spite of how brilliant the Green Hornet series was with Kato, Bruce Lee, he still couldn't work consistently. He couldn't make money consistently. And he was offered Charlie Chan's third son because Asians had to know their place. And you darn sure couldn't star and be an international star as Bruce Lee became, the first great international star. While there were so many excellent Asian actors, particularly in Japan, nobody became an international leading man until Bruce Lee did it. But I lived through all the disappointments. The Kung Fu series was created by Freddie Weintraub, the great producer who actually produced Into the Dragon along with Paul Heller. And Fred was one of the few people that believed in Bruce. He knew he could carry a film. He just knew. Because if you were around Bruce 5 minutes, you fell in love with his charisma and his kindness and his ego. Because if you're a Mexican, he said, I don't like Mexicans with mustaches. But if a Mexican came back and said, well, I don't like short Chinamen, he'd laugh his butt off. But if you didn't and you walked away, you would think he was an egotist. But no, he wanted you to be a man or a woman and defend yourself and react. So he was outrageous. Therefore, he got this kind of reputation, as Joe Louis did later, of being an egotist. But he wasn't. He just wanted to challenge you constantly. And I love the man. He was just, Bruce and Chuck Norris are two of my favorite humans on the planet because they're not only great martial artists, but great humans. And so the benefits, and you always get something out of somebody. Like a perfect example, Into the Dragon. So Bruce finally has got his dream. But when we were doing Game of Death, there were telegrams going back and forth between Warner Brothers chairman and he. And Bruce wanted to do a series because his name in Chinese is Lei Sulong, Little Dragon. So Way of the Dragon is Way of Bruce Lee. Into the Dragon, enter Bruce Lee, and so on and so forth. Plus a dragon is a big medicine in Chinese lore. But Warner Brothers didn't get it. And the chairman is like sweating bullets, but because Freddie Weintraub had saved Warner Brothers really with the great film about music that you probably heard of, and Woodstock. That film literally made a fortune and saved Warner Brothers. So the chairman listened to Freddie. He said, this guy is the real deal. He will be a superstar. But he hated the dragon thing. He said, Americans don't understand dragon. So he wanted to be Three the Hard Way, Hans Island, and he had a million names. Telegrams back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And Bruce said, I'm not doing the film unless it's Enter the Dragon. I've already done Way of the Dragon. And finally, when we were on the set, somebody delivered a telegram from the chairman of Warner Brothers who said, okay, Bruce, you win. It's Enter the Dragon. He shut down production immediately and got ready to pre-production. Now we fast forward to the Enter the Dragon. We're on the set, and he's nervous as a cat. And Bruce was always kind of hyper anyway. But he's just like, I could tell in training, he was just very intense. But he wouldn't go shoot for 2 weeks. He was just, it was like the emotion that you get before a fight. You know, the butterflies, if you will, because he knew this was his opportunity for a home run. So he wouldn't shoot. Every day he found a new excuse. But Linda, who was brilliant, Linda Lee, his wife, and Freddie, they knew how to talk to him. And once I got in on the gig, I knew how to talk to him. And we finally decided we're going to shoot the first scene in Into the Dragon is the scene just before I come in and say, you got to wear the uniform to the ritual. Bruce is just sitting there looking at a book, reading a book. There's no dialogue. So Freddie and Linda and I got that scene shot first. Then he relaxed. And then, second scene was me walking in, a character that he hates. I killed his sister. He's there because he wants to kill me. He's not going to compete in the tournament. And then it just became a party. It was like magic. Then he became Bruce Lee again. The weight was lifted off him because he'd fought his first scene. I think it was funny. Game of Death. Okay. First of all, Chuck and I did Way of the Dragon. Okay, and then Bruce called Chuck because he was his favorite martial artist. Just because I taught him a lot of kicks and punches and me diddly. He loved Chuck Norris. So he offered Chuck the part of, at that time it was Okada, which I changed to O'Hara. I said, I'm Irish. Do I look like an Okada? So I changed it in the script. But he offered the part to Chuck. Chuck called me and he says, hey, I just turned down the part in then Bruce's next movie. He says, I'm going to be a star. I can't get killed anymore. Chuck starved for 4 years with that decision, but again, that determination. And so then he said, you're going to get a call from Bruce in about 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, I get a call from Bruce. I want you to do this part. Blah, 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 blah. It only pays $500 a week. Are you in? I'm in. I knew I could make it better. And so Game of Death, we had started to shoot, as I said, back when it was Hercules Revisited. But he shut it down. Danny Onsana was there. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was there. It was another Korean fellow that was there. And so we were 4 of the 7 levels. And we shot some of the nunchuck scenes, which Danny Onsana was so good at. And we just had a lot of fun. You know, we always working on a set with Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris is fun. So with the Game of Death fun really came, unfortunately, after Bruce died. He died July 23rd, 1973. Well, we didn't shoot the film until 77. So now when I go back, for the first time, reason I didn't want to further the movie career, I didn't like the business. I didn't like the fact, I like to be in control. And when you're an actor, unless you're the star, you have a little control, but the director has more control. Unless you can, big enough star, you can fire the director. But then you got to deal with the producers. So there's so many layers of control. It's not my cup of tea. But I did it. In fact, Warner Bros. Offered me a 3-picture deal, starring role, and I turned it down because of my wife. But later realized the wisdom of it, because you're going to make as much money in real estate, which I have, as you ever will in film, but you're not going to have the temptations that you get on a movie set with all these groupies and girls that want to seduce you, married or not. And she was right. So I'm married 47 years and still in love. So film business was not for me. But I had done Way of the Dragon for $75 a week, plus my per diem, of course. I did Enter the Dragon for $500 a week. I was making $10,000 to $12,000 a week in 72 when I took the part. My wife says, when I got off the phone with Bruce, he said, you're going to Hong Kong for $500 a week for 3 months? I said, baby, God has been good to us. The house is paid for. We make lots of money. It's not a money issue. Bruce is my first close Chinese friend. I just love the man. And I'm the one world champion that he can beat on. I'm egoless. And I don't want a career in film. So I could be a great bad guy. I got offered many bad guy parts. But I said, I'm going to do this because I love Bruce. I think I can make the film better because he can beat on me. And today, professional fighters all over the world come up and say, he was really hitting you, wasn't he? I said, no kidding. Okay? So we do Game of Death, and I get there, and Sammo Hung, who was the guy that Chuck beat in the garden scene in the beginning of Into the Dragon. Well, that made him a big star. So he'd gone from star to director, 3 years, 4 years. And so now I go to do Game of Death. He's not going to react. Well, I speak Cantonese, far from fluent, but I can order my meals. Get the taxi to wait for me. Dung soy umgoy, cold water please. I can function. So, but I get there and Samo's not going to react. So I explained to him that he needs to relax. I said, the script says Bob's character beats your character. When it said Bruce Lee beats Bob's character, guess what? Bob made Bruce look good. That was my job. Because he's not killing me like he might have in real life. I preferred the beatings I got over the death. So, but he wouldn't react. So about the third scene, I just knocked him out. And then the next scene, I knocked him out again. This time I sidekick him so hard. I got a sidekick. I can hit you from an elbow distance away. I'll lay you down on a phone booth. I sidekicked him over the ropes. He landed in the audience unconscious. That time when he woke up, he said, "Why are you doing that?" Very simple. If you don't want to react, I'm going to help you. That's my Game of Death story.